Senator Mona Das, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you so much, Logan. I just absolutely adore you and your family, and I'm so honored to have gotten to know you during my campaign, and our friendship has continued on, and I'm so grateful for all you do to make sure progressive Democrats get elected in our state.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you're one of them. So that's actually a great place to start. I wanted to ask you, what are you most proud of accomplishing in the Senate in your last term?
That's no one's ever asked me that. Thank you for asking me. I'm proud of two things. I'm very proud of speaking my truth and speaking truth to power. And in this case, the power was other senators and legislators. I stood up, and after my first year, I was kind of a baby legislator, and I didn't realize that something I would say in a Chamber of Commerce meeting would go viral, and it ended up in 300 newspapers. But I called my Senate Democratic colleagues racist, sexist, misogynistic, and full of hate. And I will tell you that that comment changed the Senate, and I do believe it changed the legislature, but I can definitely say it changed the Senate. We now have diversity and equity training. We now talk about racism. We talk about white privilege, and we talk about the people that aren't in the room. And as somebody who grew up poor, and my family did make it eventually, but my family came here from India with $6. And so I grew up very poor, and we were, scraping by, like many of us in this country, especially immigrants. And my comments were about overt racism, like comments that I heard in the caucus room where people would say those people. I was also silenced from the very beginning. Before I was even elected, I think maybe 3 to 5 people, mostly white males in my caucus, told me that it's customary for the new people to not say anything for the first year in caucus. And caucus is when the 28 senators and 5 senior staff talk about all the bills, debate amendments, and chairs talk about the bills and whether or not they're supportive. And it's really the time for the 28 members to hear about bills for the very first time. And I was told by 5 members, at least 3 to 5, I'll say, that it's customary for people not to speak for the first year. Well, when you say that to a white man, they speak anyway. Mm-hmm. When you say that to a woman of color like me, I stayed silent. And for those of you who know me, you know how hard that is. I'm a talker and I'm a doer. And for the very first year, for 90 days or 105 days of that session, I made 2 comments in caucus, and that was it. And those are the comments where I feel like I spoke up because it was about housing or something, environment, something where I was the expert in the room. And those are the only 2 times I spoke up. And so because I wasn't speaking, because I was listening, and when we are talkers, we are always listening for what we should say next. And we're always thinking about what's next. And so for the first time, I was told not to speak. So I just listened, probably for the first time in my whole life. I was 48 years old by the time I got elected. So for the first time in my whole life, I was probably, I think it was 47, listening. And I heard those words, those nuances, that racism, that undertone of systemic racism and sexism and misogyny, where people say things like those people, where people say things like, well, we can't give them money because they're real needy and they'll just keep coming back for more. Those are the comments that I was talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about, and this was before the murder of George Floyd. Mm-hmm. So my colleagues, my white male colleagues and my white colleagues had not done their meeting. They had not examined their privilege. They had not realized that they were racist. And I'm going to just newsflash, I'm racist too. Everybody in this world is racist. That is how we are systematized racism. And India is the first. Listen, India has a caste system. I mean, their racism is actually in, you know, in a system called the caste system. And my family comes from a middle caste. So we weren't rich or poor, we were sort of in the middle. And I just want to say that systemic racism and inherent racism and bias. Oops.
Did something happen?
Yeah, somebody's calling me.
Oh, okay.
I want to say that racism, sexism, that's all inherent. It's learned. We are taught that from an early age. I can even see it with my nephews, 6 and 8. You know, they are reinforcing gender stereotypes. My nephew already knows that he's wealthy. You know, these things are very interesting and weird, right? And so I'm very proud that I stood up. It was in 300 newspapers, and I've been divorced, and it was the loneliest time of my life. The folks of color secretly were proud of me, but would not say anything publicly. The white people were very afraid. All of them called me to say, was it me? Was it me? Was it me? And it really was just a handful of people, probably 4 or 5 of the white men in my caucus. But I'll tell you what, Logan, when those comments were made, nobody said anything. Nobody. And that is the complicit racism. That's the complicity where they don't say anything. That is also racism. And I'm very proud of that. And the second thing I'm proud of is all the environmental bills. I'm sort of deemed as the single-use plastic warrior in the Senate, and I wear that badge extremely proudly. And you know, I passed the bill to ban plastic bags. I passed the bill to ban most styrofoam and to make sure 50% of all plastics is recycled material. And then I've been working on packaging. And I always say, it's 2022. If it's not reusable, recyclable, or compostable, why are these manufacturers still making it? They should be ashamed, and they should stop doing it. So those are my 2 really big accomplishments. And I also did a lot for housing and diversity and equity.
Love it. Yeah, so appreciative. It was so great watching you in the Senate. Yeah, I loved that. So I know that you're not running again, which of course we're sad about, but tell me why you ran in the first place.
These are so personal. I love these questions. I ran because I used to say to my friend all the time, I just think we needed more loud, brown, and proud women at the table. I ran because I heard a phrase one time that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I just got tired of being on the menu. I've been very vocal about the bad things that have happened to me. In fact, on the Senate floor, when we were debating Senator Claire Wilson's sex ed bill, I had a female Republican colleague stand up and say, we don't need to give sex education to 5-year-olds. And I stood up and I said, they say to speak even when your voice is shaking, and my voice is shaking. And I publicly talked about being molested at age 4 and then again at age 8 by white male babysitters, because my parents were new to this country and they didn't know any different. They didn't know any better. And I shared publicly. And I think the thing that I'm most proud about is how many people were inspired by my words to share their stories with me. It was very personal to me. Many men, many women, many colleagues, both men and women, shared their stories with me or just hugged me in a way that we both felt seen. And I had a staffer, one of our staffers, at the end of session that year, she bought me a, because I love to say the word fuck. It's like one of my favorite words. And she bought me a bag, like a tote bag, you know, it was recyclable because of course I was working on a plastic bag bill. And it said, a lot of fucks. And something like that. It said something about fucks. And, you know, and then she gave me some socks that said like, you know, a lot of fucks. Like it just was, and wrote me this very deeply personal note about how much me standing up in the legislature meant for her. And I'll never forget that, right? You never know who you're going to inspire by your stories. And here's what I know. Me sharing my story publicly like that may have helped heal some people or allow them to share some stories with other people. And so, you know, I shared that story very publicly. And then recently, the Supreme Court made this horrible decision to make abortion illegal. And so now many states it's illegal. And I was in DC that day and I went straight to the Supreme Court steps and I shouted my abortion. And I told everybody that I would have a 27-year-old kid. I know I wouldn't be a senator right now because the person that I was dating at the time was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And, it was young. I mean, we were 22, he was 26. He was drinking and smoking pot. That's what we did in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been stuck with that man for the rest of my life. I don't know if we'd still be together, but I do know that I'd have a 27-year-old kid with this man. Mm-hmm. And I made that decision for me. And I am not condoning anyone who decides to keep their children. I think that's amazing. It just, for me, I'm happy I made that choice and I've never regretted it, but I've always been ashamed. Mm-hmm. And I want to say, Logan, I am no longer ashamed. And I don't have regrets. I never have. And I know I wouldn't be where I was today had I had a child at 22.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that leads me to my next question, which, by the way, that bill that you were talking about, Senator Claire Wilson's bill on sex ed passed, which was
yes, it did.
Great work that you all did.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
So what are you doing to smash the patriarchy?
I think I'm calling it out. I think I'm calling out colleagues. I think I'm calling out patriarchy on my social media. I'm just tired. I mean, we live in a white man's world, and this is where we're at. This is 2022, and this is where we're at with white men rule. Mm-hmm. And we need more women, and we need more women of color. And what I'm doing to smash the patriarchy is I am training Black and brown women to run for office. I am inspiring young Black and brown women to live their dreams, whatever it is. It might not be running for office, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But I am training young women, Black and brown women, to live their dreams. I have a term for it. I call it a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. So whatever your BHAG is, I'm here to say, if you can dream it, you can do it. I dreamed of being a senator and I became one. I used the hashtag Senator Doss for about 10 years before I became Senator Doss.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And how is racism showing up in your life right now? Where do you see it the most?
I see it everywhere. I see it every day. I have lived for 50 years in this body of a, BIPOC woman, a young woman of color, an immigrant, an aunt, I see it everywhere, right? I see it in the way people talk to me. I see it in the way people dismiss me. I see it in the way they dismiss others and talk to others. We are not believed. We are not valued. I see that. I see it every single day. And that's why I'm not only here to smash the patriarchy, but I'm here to smash racism for good.
Yeah, good. It's such hard long-term work. I mean,
well, and I will say that story I told that 3 to 5 people told me not to speak in caucus. I asked my male colleagues, they didn't get that. Oh. Nobody told that to them. Jeez. And, and I think people know I'm a talker and, whatnot. And maybe that's why. I don't know. But I know that some of my other, and I won't call them out, but some of my other male colleagues and my other white colleagues, frankly, they weren't told that. And I was told that so many times that I did it.
Jeez, that's terrible. So tell me, what is it that keeps you up at night?
It's the patriarchy, it's the racism, but I do believe we can solve the problem with one thing. So if I had a magic wand and I could fix one thing, Logan, I would end poverty. I think if we end poverty, we end majority of all of the other issues that we experience. I think if we end poverty, we alleviate a lot of other problems. Yeah, more problems will pop up for sure, but alleviating poverty is the goal.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite policy prescription for that? If you could,
I have a favorite policy prescription for that? That's a great question. It's not sadly, it's not a silver bullet. It's not one thing. we have to do a lot. We have to do, our populace needs to be more educated. We are just dumbing down society, I think, in a lot of ways. I think, people want to be TikTok stars and YouTube stars. And, and I know, like, when I was a kid, people wanted to be TV stars. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But I'm just seeing, kids just be on their iPhones and iPads. And there's some learning there for sure. But I just think that we have to, be focused on education like they are in Asia.
Yeah, for sure.
The Chinese and the Indians, they are focused on education. We have to give people opportunity. We have to have more women and women of color in leadership. I believe NASDAQ is now requiring 50% women on boards. Our boards have always been white males of privilege. And we need more women. We need more white women. We need more women of color. We need more diverse experience and backgrounds. And that's another thing that I'm working on, is trying to get on a couple corporate boards. And I really just think that poverty needs to be, food insecurity, housing insecurity, reducing recidivism, putting people in jail for being poor. I mean, that a lot of people are in jail because they're poor.
Yeah.
They can't get out on bail, or they have such trauma in their lives that their only sort of solution is to end up in jail. I know somebody who's been out of jail so many times, and on and off drugs and on and off drugs, but this person has so much trauma, childhood trauma. So I think alleviating poverty and alleviating trauma, childhood trauma, might be to go hand in hand.
Absolutely. I want us to experiment more with universal basic incomes at lower levels of government, like city, county, state.
Yes, universal basic income and universal healthcare.
Absolutely.
And, it took me a long time to realize why corporations were so against universal healthcare. I figured it out. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
It's going to blow your mind.
Okay.
That is one of the only ways corporate America can keep you there, is if they have your healthcare.
Yeah.
And so if we have universal healthcare, suddenly you're more mobile. And the millennials and the zennials and the Gen Zs, they don't care. They are starting their own businesses. They are working for themselves. I mean, I've been working remote for 15 years and I love it. And I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I'm still an entrepreneur, and I still run multiple businesses. But it gives me that flexibility. Right now I'm in St. Louis. I travel 6 months out of the year because I can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
And before I was elected, I did travel 6 months out of the year. And, I'm looking forward to getting back to that once I'm no longer in office.
Yeah, absolutely. So what surprised you most about running for office and being in office?
Great question. So first, I thought friends of mine that would be there for me disappeared. And people who I never knew, never met, were there to support me. Like you. I mean, you're one of my biggest champions. I mean, you and your family threw this amazing party, Cue the Blue, which obviously you're doing again. Thank you very much. And you showed up, you knocked on doors, you were huge donors to my campaign. You talked to people about me. I mean, you're that person, Logan, that showed up that I never could have dreamed of, you or the rest of your family. And like I said, people, my friends and family just disappeared. Didn't think I could do it. Didn't think I had it in me. Didn't believe in me. And that was surprising. The second thing was I just, this is really hard to say, but I thought people that were legislators would be a little bit more worldly and knowledgeable and a little bit more woke. And, I discovered the racism, deep-seated racism and sexism. And, many of my colleagues are doing the work, which I'm very grateful for. Many are not.
Yeah, that's disappointing to hear. Okay, so tell me this. If you had a magic wand to fix something, what would it be and why?
I think it's the poverty question, poverty and alleviating trauma.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've been pondering a lot, Logan, recently is like, why do we do these horrible things to people? Like, why do we keep doing it over and over again? My dad was talking to me, I'm here for a family wedding, and my dad was talking about what the Pope just apologized for what they did to Native communities in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing this to people?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we rape and molest? And one of the things that I learned recently, which was really profound, is that 100% of people who molest and rape were, maybe not raped, but molested at least, were also assaulted. But not 100% of people who have been assaulted will turn around and assault. And so that to me is trauma feeding trauma. And then the other thing that's trippy and blew my mind recently, bear with me here, and I'm just thinking about a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I was literally made by my grandmother, because when my grandmother made my mother, when you are born as a woman, all of your eggs are already there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it, my grandmother made my mother and her eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandmother made me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you think about generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You think about, trauma that's passed from generation to generation. So my grandmother had 13 kids, only 11 lived, right? So how much trauma is in, just continually having baby after baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then, things have happened to me. My mom, she's also had all kinds of trauma, like her ACEs score must be very high. And then, then she made me, right? So that generational trauma, we have to stop that cycle. I have this like visual, and so bear with me, it's a little woo-woo, but I have this visual of all of us walking around. Imagine you as an egg, that your body is encompassed by a giant egg shell, and as big as your arms are wide, sort of like Veruca Salt in Charlie and Chocolate Factory. That we are all these eggs. We're just fragile, Logan, and we are just bumping into each other, and our traumas are rubbing off on each other. Our wins, our losses, our successes, our disappointments. And we're just these eggs just walking around. And in this life, and I don't really know what I believe spiritually, but I do believe that I know about this life. And in this life, we're trying to solve those traumas and discover those traumas. And I've done a lot of work and a lot of healing. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I definitely have more work and healing to do, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about my trauma and trying to heal from that. And I do believe, back to your earlier question, that why I'm so driven and why I work so hard and why I'm so passionate about helping other BIPOC women get elected and rooting out mediocrity, and also rooting out white privilege and white supremacy and white culture that's dominant in our society, is I just believe that I have a unique voice, and I've been through so much. And Logan, I just don't want anyone to have gone through what I've gone through in my life. And if I can prevent that from happening for one person, then I feel like I've done my job on this planet.
Yeah. Okay, so Senator, you are extraordinary, and you have boundless energy and a creative spirit, and you are just a go-getter. We're not all you. Let's say that we are a person who is watching the news and reading the paper, and we're concerned about what is happening, but we're not sure like what our access point is to be able to make any kind of change. What would you say to someone who was wanting to do something but didn't know what to do?
Well, there's lots you can do. So the first thing you should do is find a local candidate and national candidate. So your local, right now it's legislative races, so local representative or senator that's running for office, that you believe in their values, whatever they are, right? I've got, my endorsements. There's an Indian woman running for my seat, Satwinder Kaur. She's phenomenal. She's extraordinary. And she needs to win. Shukri Olo is running in the 47th as well. She's a refugee from Somalia. Satwinder is a Sikh woman. These two women need our votes. They need our donations. They need our our time and our volunteer hours. There are so many local candidates that are doing a great job. Representative Deborah Entenman is my seatmate, and she's also running for re-election, and she is great. And there's so many candidates. So find a candidate. We've got Natasha Hill running for Congress in Spokane. We have some amazing candidates running: April Berg, Brandy Donahue, Jamila Taylor, Claire Wilson, Emily Randall. These candidates are extraordinary. And they're also elected officials, extraordinary. So if you believe more BIPOC women or women should be in the tables where, things happen, and to be at the tables of power, support women. Noelle Frame is running, Sharon Shoemake. I mean, the list goes on. Lisa Mannion is running for King County prosecutor. We need her. And these folks that I just mentioned, these amazing women, have opponents that are the exact opposite in values, and do support the abortion ban, and just the progress that we've made as women. So find a local candidate. I've mentioned a few. Do some research in your area. There's plenty of amazing people running, men and women. Support them. You can support them in a couple of ways. First, you can donate money to them, and you might not think that your $11 or $21 or $101 is a lot. It's so much. It also gives them some hope. It gives them some oomph. Every time a donation comes in, you just feel like somebody's got your back. So the monetary amount doesn't matter. If you can do $10 a month, do that. If you can do $100 a month, do that. If you can do max out at $2,000, do that. Tell a friend. Logan, you do a great job of that. You and your family, you tell all your friends who to support and when and why and how. Tag people, right? Say, I just supported Satwinder Kaur. I just supported Shukri Olo. Join me. Well, if everybody on your Facebook page gives them $10, they're never going to have to fundraise again. We spend so many hours fundraising. Mm-hmm. I did 10 to 12 hours a week. And I love fundraising, and I'm really good at it because I come from a sales background. Most candidates hate it. Mm-hmm. So if you can just give them the money, then they don't have to fundraise. They can focus on knocking on doors. So the reason why Democrats win is we knock on doors. We get out there. I personally knocked on 8,000. My campaign knocked on 30. I just talked to Satwinder. Her campaign's already knocked on 13,000 doors.
Nice.
That is incredible. Mm-hmm. And that is what wins. Now, what the Republicans do is they just send mail. It's negative mail. It's scare tactics. It's fear-based. It's fear-mongering. They get on TV and they spread lies. Mm-hmm. So Winder, I just watched it a TikTok this morning, and she dispelled 4 lies of the candidate that she's running. That they're running against each other, obviously, because it's an open seat. Since I'm not running again, mm-hmm. And he basically starts calling her out they're both on city council together, Kent City Council. He called her out for votes that he also took. Just ridiculous. So she does this great TikTok, which I'll send you so you can post it, Logan. Mm-hmm. Actually, I just posted it on my Facebook. She did a great TikTok dispelling the 4 lies in his advertising. So they lie, mm-hmm. and they will also just do mail and TV. But right. Satwinder and Shukri and all these great candidates are out there doing the work, knocking on doors, going to community events, connecting with people one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So if you want to volunteer, okay, knocking on doors is scary for people. I'm going to tell you this. Knocking on doors as a volunteer, we always pair you with somebody else. So there's 2 of you. If you've never done it before, we pair someone who's experienced with someone who's not. We also have you knock on doors of Democrats. Mm-hmm. So you're not knocking on doors. The candidates knock on what we call persuasion doors. They knock on doors of people who sometimes vote R, sometimes vote D, or never vote. Mm-hmm. We send volunteers to doors of Democrats to just make sure they turn in the ballot. And just so we're clear, the voter turnout in this primary election, because it's in August, mm-hmm. which is when everyone's on summer holiday, mm-hmm. is super low. So we're very worried. And Republicans vote. They vote early and they vote often. Mm-hmm. So we're very worried. So getting voter turnout, you can do it also. You can do text banking, which is super easy. You can literally just text people, hey, did you vote? Hey, here, what's your voting plan? Hey, here's all the Dropbox locations. You have to remind people. We're so busy. People mm-hmm. need to be reminded to vote. So you can do text banking. You can also call people if that's your preferred
Mm-hmm.
way. You can also do social media posts, right? Those are really easy ways. Not knocking on doors is not for everybody, but I'm just going to ask you, Logan, can you share with everybody your experience of knocking on doors? You and your family came down multiple times to knock on doors. So can you share your experience of if you were nervous and how it went and why you kept coming back?
I have knocked on so many doors, and that kind of thing doesn't make me nervous. I also have done a bunch of sales and done so many things way harder than knocking on doors. The only part that's hard is I'm such a pansy when it comes to bad weather. And I remember knocking on doors with you when it was like a torrential downpour. So that was the hard part. But like you said, we're knocking on the doors of Democrats, and it's just reminding people to get their ballots in. And most people are real friendly. Some people are curious. A lot of people don't even answer the door. I mean, it's really not like a scary thing that I think sometimes I'm always inviting people to come knock on doors and people are like, oh, I'm scared. And it's not a scary thing. And it's fun.
Yeah.
It's
So
also,
you're an extrovert like me. So
yeah,
what would you say to someone who wasn't an extrovert? Like, what would you, like,
I
what
would,
should they be afraid?
no, here's what I would say. If you're the introvert in the door knocking pair, then you're the one that's looking at the addresses and checking off what doors you're at, and the other person does the talking. So of course I'm always the one doing the talking. And I
Yeah, me
remember
too.
our friend Ursula, she was the one who's always checking off the names and whatever. So
Yeah, see, that's great. You can do door knocking and be you, and you also then can give directions and where's the next door and who you're knocking on, and there's a role for everybody. So I love that question. So there's lots of ways to get engaged. My advice is don't sit out. We have got to flip these seats.
yeah.
Um, nationally and federally, we have an opportunity. The Republicans think they can take Washington back. They
Mm-hmm.
think they have the path to victory in Washington state.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, we're only Democratic in the Senate by 3 seats.
Mm,
3 seats, everybody. That's it.
yeah.
So if we lose those 3 seats, we're Republican majority again. And that cannot happen. And it cannot happen on my watch. And I know it's not happening on yours.
Absolutely not. Senator Emily Randall won her last uh, election by 102 votes. Get
That's
the
right.
vote out. Okay, so I know you're
Get the vote out.
so thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'm excited for Q the Blue. And I'm excited to see you. Oh, wait, one more
Me
thing. I'm
too.
sorry. What is next for
Yeah.
you?
Well, I will say this. My political career is not over. I cannot share publicly what I'm working on. I have 3 really big things in the hopper, and they're all moving forward. And I'm very excited to share once I'm allowed to, once I'm able to. But I will be taking my advocacy, my love for the environment, my love for making sure women of color are elected, and smashing the patriarchy and smashing white supremacy. I will be taking those skills, my passion, my energy, my boundless energy, as you pointed out, to a global and national level. And I can't wait to share.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see. Thank you so much. That was fabulous. And I really can't wait to see what's next for you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next month. All right. Thank you, Senator.